2021, four men got together to make a radio show that nobody asked for. This is the result.
Welcome to Broad Street Radio. I'm Michael Morris with my good friend Jonathan Meenach, John E. Cash. John, how are you?
I am doing well. How are you, bud?
I should say that normally I say the show is brought to you by Monster. It's brought to you by Edward Jones Region 110, the best 110 around.
Because we give 110% effort.
You sure? Or is that kind of like
maybe 108?
Is that like when the American Legion 237? Is that the same thing? They give 237% to their veterans?
I doubt it.
We don't treat our veterans well here.
No, but you know the Legions, the VFWs, the AMVETs, those guys, they sell them like dollar beers, so that's actually better than nothing. Right?
I was actually invited to join the VFW here in Grove City, and I thought, well, I didn't serve, and they said, well, your dad did, and your grandfather did. I'm like, sure. Your numbers are that bad that you need me. I wanted to join just so I could wear that like Vietnam vet hat.
Right.
It would obviously be 40 years too late.
This is WWII on it.
And then I wanted to have a reason to wear camouflage. Speaking of camouflage, I always like to ask you the tough questions. Are there hidden problems in our economy, or is that all lies?
Always.
Well,
always lies.
So Michael Burry, you are familiar with him. Michael Burry is
he's on the spectrum, I'm sure.
He is a little.
He's off, man.
Yeah, he's a little Rain Man-ish.
Totally is Rain
But if you ever saw the movie The Big Short, Michael Burry was the one who saw the bubble in the housing market.
What he figured out, it wasn't the bubble in the housing market that he found.
Well, it was the leverage, wasn't it?
Yes. What he found out was that banks were creating these mortgage-backed securities that they were selling to other investors and investment banks and pension funds and all this other stuff. And he started digging into what was inside the actual mortgage-backed security. There were thousands of holdings in each one of these investments. And
they had different grades.
Well, they were all AAA rated.
Right.
Which means if it's AAA rated, that the odds of default are very, very, very low. And what got these things the AAA rating was how well diversified they were, because they had thousands of holdings. Well, when your thousands of holdings are bags of shit, it's still shit.
Right.
Just because you have 1,000 bags of it.
But the only way that it keeps going is if more people are investing in it. Right. You don't want to be the one left holding that bag when people are like, hey, this probably isn't for me.
Yeah. So what he did was he found this out, saw that they were all subprime mortgages, junk. Nothing was backing them up. They were made of, I joke about the ninja loan.
Yeah.
No income, no job application. Right. That all of these houses were sold to people who didn't have jobs. Their jobs included, late nights and polls. So,
and we don't mean election polls.
Yeah, definitely
we mean
not.
The polls that matter for working moms.
Right. You got to pay for college somehow. I mean, have you seen the inflation on college tuition?
You ever ask any of those girls? They're all in college.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, they go hand in hand.
I mean, if I could, I would. No one would pay me to take my clothes off.
I don't know about that, big boy.
So he found out that this was happening. And so he went to the banks and he's like, hey, you know what? I want to do what's called a credit default swap. He said, I'm going to pay you. And if that thing goes belly up, you pay me. And so he was paying insurance premiums to the banks. And the banks are like, God, we're making money hand over fist.
With his investors' money.
Yeah.
So it wasn't just him.
It wasn't just him.
He wasn't putting $2,000 a month into it.
No. This was millions upon millions of dollars of other investors, because he managed an investment fund, if you will. And so he was that confident that this was going to be a problem. And so the interesting thing is that the subprime crisis started, and the banks refused to pay him because they're like, no, it's fine. They're AAA. They're well diversified. He's like, no, they're not. And so he kept having to pay premiums to the banks as the market's tanking. And then finally, the rating agencies got caught up in it because they found out that, Moody's and Fitch and all these other rating agencies were effectively not willing to rate it AAA because they were afraid to lose the business. Because a bank would have to go to Moody's or Fitch or S&P and say, hey, we want this rated and we'll pay you to rate it, which isn't fine. But then they weren't ethical enough to say, hey, you got a bag of crap. It's not going to be rated AAA.
And the same thing happens in the media world. It is, we know this is bad, but we're going to try to give you enough information to say, here's all the good.
Yeah.
You're not going to tell.
Never let the details get in the way of a good story.
Right.
Right.
Well, the reason I thought we should cover this piece is that what we're going to get into next is Burry is saying what he's looking at is the default in China.
Yes.
And then you look at it and say, well, why does that matter? Well, because China owns so much.
They own quite a bit of
real
American
estate
debt.
holdings.
Yeah.
In Hollywood, they own a ton. So when you're watching a movie in, I forget what they call it, but Nate, what's the name of the thing they put the nameplate in front? You know, like Braun and all that kind of stuff. It'll be the production house that's working on it. So it used to be like Orion Pictures. You just have one thing that would be there. Well, now there's like 4 or 5 slides. If you ever see a movie that one of those slides is 10 cent,
yes,
that is a China-backed situation.
Tencent is a Chinese conglomerate. They own like 40% of Epic Games, which makes Fortnite. They own Tencent Music. They own a ton of stuff.
So they are over leveraged in terms. So when the pandemic hits, they're so over invested in Hollywood blockbuster movies that if you put them on the shelf, you've already put out. So for the James Bond movie, the last one that just came out, it needed to make $1 billion to break even. That's why they couldn't sell it to Apple or Amazon, because they were getting offers for $500,000, $600 million, and they had to turn it down because if it didn't make $1 billion total, it was going to lose money.
Yeah.
And it's going to lose money for the investors, which China was part of that, right? So
wait, I thought we had to call it the far east of Canada.
I think we're allowed to say Wuhan now. If we go, yay Wuhan. You can't say anything bad about it.
Oh.
Actually, edit the
Ric
yay
Flair,
part out.
Wuhan. Yeah.
I wish he would do that.
That would be amazing.
So the issue became that Burry's looking at this and saying they are going to default, which causes a rift here because as they've invested in so much real estate in companies here, it's going to hurt us. Now, first of all, is that a concern?
I mean, look, is it a concern? Yeah, it probably is a concern. But there's always concerns. I'm always reminded of that. Remember that scene in Men in Black when Will Smith is freaking out because there's something that they need to take care of, and he's like, "Sit down." There's always something like that. Like that's
there's always a problem.
There's always going to be a problem, right? That's how financial markets are. They climb. There's something happens. The bubble bursts. They fall. They climb again. Something else happens. It's just the cycle. It's the way that it is. Is there anything we can do about it? I mean, from a macro perspective, sure. I'm sure the governments could get involved and, screw things up even more than they already have.
I was going to say, why are you putting them in? They
already are in it. They're part of the problem. I mean, let's just, you know what? Maybe we can print our way out of this. What do you think?
Well, that's another thing.
How many trillions do you have to print to get out of problems?
Well, your friend and mine, Bernie Sanders and Biden, want to print more money and do another unemployment type of voucher, kind of like Andrew Yang was talking about, like a not universal basic income, but if you hit certain triggers that the government wants to pay you so universal you can get by. Yeah, but they're calling it something else. They're calling it PUA, I think is what they're calling it, instead of universal basic income, because they can't let Yang have a good idea.
Yeah, of course not. He, he's a self-identified socialist, so God forbid we have that word out there.
I just find it odd to believe that you cannot solve things by giving more money out because the value of the dollar goes down no matter what you do.
Well, in theory, yes, but the other thing that people need to realize, and I've had this conversation a lot with clients because people are worried about the amount of money we're printing, and we should have some concern. It's not a catastrophic, we're falling off a cliff tomorrow concern, though. And the reality is that I read a statistic that about 95 cents of every dollar that we print goes back into our economy. So if the debt goes up and the economy goes up, yay, that's fine. If the debt goes up and the economy goes down, that's a problem.
Right.
That's when you have recessions, and that's when, people lose jobs.
But I do find it funny that you and I always talk about this. 70% of the American economy is based on people buying things.
Yes, plus 70+%.
Right.
Yeah, it's probably
it's getting heavier now.
Yeah, it is.
Because we don't make anything here.
Nope.
Right? So after the NAFTA agreement comes in 1996, we ship everything abroad.
Yes.
So
Canada and Mexico.
Canada, Mexico, China, Ukraine, wherever we can find cheap labor.
Sure.
So if we don't buy things, that's why I thought it was funny that Biden says at Christmas time, spend as much as you can. And so now you're seeing articles come out. I always think the articles are funny because whatever side's in power, it will be, this is a good thing to spend more money. Yes. Spend more money than you have. Don't worry about it, because those numbers, when they report them, we all look and go, oh, the economy is up. Like they're saying right. The jobs growth number is astronomical. We added 5 million more jobs. I always think that's funny because 5.4 million people left their jobs permanently between October and November. So we're at zero. We made no movement.
we added 5 million jobs. Well, it's because everybody left it.
Right.
Because they're tired of being,
But if you're at
labor.
net zero and we were still at a problem, they say unemployment's at 4.6%. The other number I would love to know, we haven't heard this since the Obama era, is the what do they call it?
Underemployment.
Underemployment.
Yeah.
The guy who used to work as an accountant that's the greeter at Walmart now.
Well, that and the other thing that's fascinating with this whole pandemic and what it's done, it has put a premium on time, and people value time differently. I've noticed that. People are more willing to not work. Of course, the government's going to take care of me, so don't have to worry about it. And so people are like, F it. I don't need a job. I'll just sit home and, I'll collect 40, 50 grand from the government. My wife will collect 40 or 50 grand. And if you have a couple kids, there's an extra $4 grand a month, Why go to work? I don't need to. And so the problem is that now you have people exiting the job market. Well, the way that unemployment is calculated, those people don't count. If you're not actively looking for employment, you're not unemployed.
Which is funny because that just got brought up this week, that if you're not seeking it, we don't count those numbers. So that 4.6 or 5.2, whatever that number is, could really be 9, but we're not
could be 15.
Right, but we're not counting it.
Right.
I always think it's funny what we can selectively say. Like if I went to pay my credit card bill or something and it's $4 grand and I go, $2 grand of that, I didn't mean to spend it. I didn't really care about it, but I'll give you the 2 that I think is valid.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
People were negotiating like, I'll show up to work and I don't know. I want to work, 2 or 3 hours today. I don't really feel like, what's really interesting is so I saw this a long time ago when the actual financial crisis happened back in 07, 08, 09. That if you ran out of unemployment benefits, so if you were unemployed for longer than the insurance and the benefits that the company that you worked for paid for, they stopped counting you. So you still don't have a job, you still have no money coming in, but you don't count as unemployed because you're not getting benefits. Like, think about that. Right. How idiotic is that?
Listen, I don't understand the whole system that you can selectively scrub information the way that you want. But I think when it comes to you can report anything you want. So it's like Mayorkas, right? When they're like, do you have things handled at the border? Yes, Senator, we've got it under control. How many people are coming through? We haven't been counting that. So someone does count it and they say it's 1 million people a month. But you're not talking about the people that came from Guatemala. Those are only like 20,000. Okay, but overall, how many people? Well, we don't have that number.
Yeah.
So we count the numbers that mean something.
That we want to mean something.
But I also, if you're watching, whatever you read, whatever you see on television, it's all garbage anyway, right? It's pre-scrubbed because
100%.
They're not going to tell you the truth.
Nope.
I'll tell you this. A dear friend of mine, she works for a company. I'm giving her a check. We're just having coffee. And she asked about Jack Dorsey stepping down.
Oh, yeah.
At the same time, the Epstein trial is going on. Look it up. So
he's not dead, by the way.
yet. So that Marxist steps down and she says, well, what's going on with Twitter? Because she doesn't get on Twitter.
Right.
So I'm trying to explain the problems they had with censorship and how they removed the Hunter Biden laptop story. And she laughs and she says, oh, that is just QAnon nonsense. And I go, no, but that's real. Like that was really reported. They really found out. And it wasn't one, it was three. And she said, you're watching Fox News. I don't watch the news.
Yeah.
I don't even have cable. So I don't watch it. I'm telling you what was reported by, and she said, well, if it's not in the New York Times, and I said, but it was in the New York Times.
Yeah.
That's
half
still,
a second.
Yeah. It's still a made up
It was
story.
probably spun as, look at this QAnon conspiracy about
Right.
Hunter. That's what the media does. You want to follow somebody who's a legit journalist, follow Glenn Greenwald. Used to work for,
didn't he?
the land.
He was a founder of
a paper.
yeah.
What the hell was the name of that?
I forget the name of it. But this is first of all, he's a gay man. That's a white gay man.
Yes.
That was at the time when the WikiLeaks stuff, before it came out.
Yes.
He was kind of like the WikiLeaks guy, like the
and he was the one that reported a lot of stuff that Julian Assange was leaking.
Correct.
Like he was the one coming out saying, yeah, I can verify.
And that's when they turned on him because all media's before 1996, there were 50 different media companies. Now there's only 6. So when you see something as an independent, but has quality like this show of their setup and everything else. Yeah. They are being funded by somebody like an NPR. NPR is funded with millions upon millions of dollars.
Taxpayer funded,
right?
It's free.
But who's giving you these stories? There are no reporters, right? So Glenn Greenwald's one of the last guys, like a Matt Taibbi, who used to work for Rolling Stone. Those people have to get funded so that they have a job.
Right.
So they do have to sell out somewhat. But Glenn Greenwald actually was in Kuwait, in Libya. He was arrested and detained.
I think he was on that chopper with Brian Williams.
Brian Williams is, I'm telling you what, that guy was a hero. My favorite story was how he had that puppy. He made sure to be like waist deep in water in Katrina.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, it's like he was talking about all these bodies he saw floating down there. Never saw one. Yeah. And when he told that story about being shot down in a chopper on Dave Letterman, and then they show footage of him, nothing happened whatsoever. Right. Remember when Hillary Clinton was saying she was being shot at?
Oh yeah,
on the chopper.
Yeah.
And then they asked Sinbad the comic, and he said no, nothing happened. And she said he just doesn't recall it right.
Yeah.
They showed pictures of them getting off the helicopter together.
You know what? When I'm up on a helicopter and I'm getting shot at with RPGs and giant 50 caliber bullets, it's easy to forget.
I think it's funny that that people are recording this. It's not like you and I going somewhere where we'd have to prove we were somewhere. Somebody's constantly monitoring your activity.
Yeah.
But going back to the economy part of this, I look at this completely different. I want markets to crash because I want to be able to buy that stuff cheaper and invest 100%. For the long haul.
Look, 100% of the time when the markets have gone down, they've come back up. And 100% of the time when they've come back up, they've gone to new highs. Now, I say they have. The past doesn't predict the future, but like Mark Twain said, it often rhymes. So my position is the same as yours, is that as long as companies are producing things that people buy, regardless of where it's produced or how it's produced or who buys it, markets are going to continue to appreciate at some point, right? So yes, I look at everything as an opportunity to get better and to further whatever your goals or ambitions are, and everyone else should look at it that way as well.
I think if I was over the age of 60, I don't know. Let's say I'm 70. I don't know that I have time to recover if it crashes, right?
Well, 100%. But then at that point, not all your money is in stocks, you know? So, you got to be smart about it. You can't be over levered at any point in time. You got to be smart about what you're doing. But kind of back to the Michael Burry thing is that, yes, there's always a spaceship sitting in outer space ready to blow up Earth. It's just the way that it is. Right?
God, I hope so. I hate it here.
I think there's something to be said. I wonder about Elon Musk shooting every one of those, whatever, hundreds of thousands of satellites up into space. It's got to be.
You ever seen when one falls down?
He's just wanting to provide internet for someone in the middle of Africa. Really?
when I think about the fact that all those people in Africa could get on Facebook and Twitter, and I think they're better off without it.
100%. They should ask for, like, you take down the satellites, Elon. We don't need this shit.
You ever see a picture of the globe with all the space junk? Have you ever heard the term?
No, I've never seen it, but I've heard about it.
Holy shit, dude. It looks like my sink. There's just shit everywhere. And when they're talking about this asteroid that I think was supposed to pass us in the last couple of days, it was like it would either pass us or we'd have to go and knock it. What is that movie, Armageddon?
Yes.
We're going to have to send Bruce Willis's ass up there with Demi Moore's like spousal support check. When I see that, I'm like, fucking, let's go. Hit one of the coasts. I don't care.
You hope it's like a NASCAR race. Turn left.
Listen, I told somebody on the phone yesterday, I want to be Will Smith. I am legend. Everybody else is wiped out but me and my dog. So I'm rooting for everything bad that could happen here because I'm sick of the people on this planet.
Don't worry. Omnicron. It's going to come and get us.
Oh, I'm super excited about that. I really was. And so here's the funny thing. So you know how I love conspiracy theories.
Oh, yeah.
This guy just put it on TikTok. Don't you question how, if everything's locked down in Australia, how did the variant get from China to Australia?
Yes.
And I literally was like, this guy's a goddamn genius. That makes total sense. You're on total lockdown. How does somebody get through that net?
Right. I don't know, man. That's the $1 million question.
Do you think that here's the way I'm looking at it. And again, this is total tin hat. I'm looking at this and saying, the market can't crash if we always have a reason, right? Like, if I do something stupid at school, my dad can't beat my ass if he has to work 2 more hours tonight. So, you know what I mean? He'll be tired, so we'll cover it tomorrow. Yeah. If there's always a variant or always something else to be scared of, the market going down, you can go, well, this is why. We're looking for a reason to slow that down.
It very well could be. It could be that, world governments are trying to cover for the fact that China screwed up. I don't know. I mean, at the end of the day, none of it matters to me. Like, it's entertaining. You know, I got my popcorn ready, and I'm sitting around watching this. But at the end of the day, I've got a strategy of what we do, and we move on. Like, it's go live life and have fun while you can, right? Before someone says you're not allowed to. I don't know, man. That's a good question. That's a great question, actually, when you start thinking about the big picture of things. But
I only look at it as it's a way to.
I think
it's a way to slow the bleeding, right? So people are gonna die through this, right? Not from the the virus, but your financial security. Most people don't have financial advisors, right?
I don't know about most, but a lot. Yeah.
I'm talking about the everyday guy. Like, how many people do we talk to that don't have a financial advisor, but they got a boat?
Yeah.
Right? So they don't have anyone
Priorities
to ask.
are important, man.
I know, but they don't have anyone to ask. So we know people that are friends of ours, like we've talked about it. There's some people you can't, no matter what you say to them, they're not going to listen.
True. That's
so
very true.
even if you said, look, this thing will dip, you should get in now.
Yeah.
They're looking at it like, I'll buy a car.
Right.
Right. And that car depreciates as time goes on. If they would invest their money and plan for the next 10 to 15 years, it would be a totally different scenario.
Oh yeah, absolutely. There's you can look at, there's a calculator where you can look at compound interest, right? And if you look at the history of the market and what it's returned, 11% a year roughly. If you put $100 into the market back in like 1926 or something like that, and you let it compound over, 80, 100, 120 years, that $100 turns into like $38 million. It's like, holy shit. What it made me realize is that I really hate my great grandparents because they didn't have the foresight to put $100 into.
Do you think
the
it's they didn't like you without knowing you?
Oh, 100%.
Because I've met people that are just like, fuck that kid.
Yeah.
And they have no financial stakes at all.
Yeah. That's probably true.
So
like,
your idea,
breed a
before
heathen.
we get out of here, here's my idea. I wish we would have brought this up first. Why doesn't Elon Musk build a time cop type of scenario so you could go back in time?
Yeah, there you go.
Because we're all going to die from floating space junk hitting us. Like that, I literally, the smartest man in the universe that we know of literally wants to clean up the space up there.
Yeah. Well, the other thing I think is interesting is I thought about that as well. Is that you got Elon Musk, Richard Branson, Bezos, the richest, smartest people on the planet, all want to get off.
It is first of all, again,
I'm not talking about at night. We're talking about they want to leave this planet.
None of those guys can please a woman long enough to keep them around. They're all leaving them and taking half their fortune. I do think that it is fascinating that we now look at space exploration like, yeah, but it's been done. Whereas we look at it and go, Facebook changed to Meta. That's a big deal.
Right. Yeah.
We are the dumbest monkeys wearing watches that have ever existed.
That's accurate.
Let's leave on that note. But that's all we have time for on Broad Street Radio. We will see you next week.